So on this day, I needed to make some homemade mayo. We were completely out of mayo and Miracle Whip, and I wanted to make some potato salad. So I decided to go ahead and give it a go. I've heard it's extremely easy, and I can vouch now that I've done it that it is. And this recipe that I used was delicious. We could easily make the switch to homemade mayo using this recipe. It is from the From Scratch Farmhouse YouTube channel. And I will leave the recipe in the description box, but I encourage you to go watch her video on homemade condiments because most people have the challenge with homemade condiments that their family just doesn't, they don't like it because it doesn't taste the same as store bought. And she has some great tips for um, how to make that transition easier, recipes that are tried and true. She's got her young family to make the switch to homemade condiments. And I can tell you from tasting this that mayo that I'm really excited to try her other recipes for homemade condiments. So um, on with the recipe. I was lightly beating the egg and added the seasonings, added the mustard. I did not have garlic powder, so I added some fresh garlic. And I also didn't have the distilled white vinegar, but I did have rice wine vinegar, so I used some of that. And I had some avocado oil, but I did have to bring it up to the proper measurement with some canola. I have heard from other bloggers that extra virgin olive oil just does not make a very good tasting mayo. They said regular olive oil is fine, but I don't know that I would use extra virgin olive oil for this. I also made a substitution with my mustard. We are out of your basic table, mustard, so I used some Dijon instead. So I'm sure my mayo turned out a little more mild tasting compared to what hers did because I did use milder ingredients like my mustard and my vinegar were more mild. But I will tell you, this turned out so thick, so creamy, delicious flavor. So seriously, give it a try. Just at least try it one time because I'm flabbergasted at how closely this tasted like store-bought mayo. On day 17, we had leftover biscuits and gravy for breakfast. For lunch, we had hot dogs and potato salad. And for supper, we had pork chops, potato wedges, and corn. And I had some graham cracker crumbs I needed to use up. I blended a few too many for the holidays. And so I decided to make a crust, and I had the ingredients to make a lemon pie, and it was easy and delicious. On day 18, we had eggs and sausage gravy for breakfast. For lunch, we had leftovers. And for supper, I had quite a bit of fried chicken left over from the birthday meal and a few odds and ends in the leftover bin. So I just made what I would call the leftover birthday meal for supper. On day 19, we had grilled cheese sandwiches or protein shakes for breakfast. And for lunch, we had leftovers or salad. And for supper, we had garden salad, bean salad, and I made up a dab of chicken salad from our home canned chicken breast. On day 20, I made pancakes for breakfast. I took a jar of my beef stew starter and heated that up and seasoned it and had beef stew for lunch. And for supper, we kind of did the same meal again. We had the garden salad, the bean salad, and I did have some ground beef laid out, so I made some cheeseburgers. On day 21 of the pantry challenge was my son's birthday. So we had hot dogs, of all things, for breakfast. For lunch, we did stop on the way back from visiting a museum for his birthday. We stopped and had pizza, and then we did leftovers or salads for supper. And as you recall from the beginning of this, birthdays, that's separate from my budgeted grocery meal. That's why we did the pizza, and then on the next day, you'll see that we did the birthday dinner with the whole family. On day 22, we did egg sandwiches for breakfast. We skipped lunch because we knew we had a massive Chinese buffet type supper ahead of us. I spent the entire day cooking. I did pare it down a little bit. I was going to make everything homemade, And the more I thought about the menu, I thought, I'm only one person. I'm not an entire kitchen staff at a Chinese buffet restaurant. So I did purchase some ready-made chicken and some ready-made sauces to ease the load a little bit on myself. He wanted coffee cake, which I clarified with him. He meant coffee flavored, not coffee cake, what we think of when we think of drinking something with or eating some coffee cake with coffee. So I made some espresso cupcakes. I did make the Szechuan green beans, the crab rangoon, the lo mein noodles, and I made a chicken and broccoli, and some rice homemade, but the other chickens that you might see in upcoming pictures from leftovers, I did purchase all that stuff to make it easier on myself. But it was delicious. Everybody enjoyed themselves so much. And I'm a little bit sad that this is my kiddo's last year as a kiddo. On day 23, we did leftovers from that massive meal that I made of the Chinese buffet. We ate that for breakfast and lunch. And by dinner, we needed a break because we were all Chinese out. So I did some eggs, some bacon, and I had some sausage gravy, and we ate that on toast. And so we had breakfast for dinner. On day 24, we had protein shakes for breakfast, leftovers for lunch, and for supper, I made pork chops, green beans. Those were actually leftover Szechuan green beans, by the way. And I finally got around to baking those sweet potatoes that I was so excited about and just was so busy I didn't get around to until this point in the month. On day 25, we did protein shakes or leftovers for breakfast, salad or leftovers for lunch. And for supper, we had taco salad, which was amazing. And yes, my bowl was already dirty because this was actually my second helping, and I forgot to take a picture of the first helping. On day 26, we had protein shakes or egg sandwich for breakfast. We had leftovers for lunch. And for supper, I think the sickness might have started to hit our house because a couple of us weren't feeling great. We decided to go with just some tomato soup. I think hubby had a salad. For dinner that night, we just weren't feeling it, so we did something real quick and easy and simple and soothing and comforting. On day 27, we had protein shakes or smoothies for breakfast, leftovers for lunch. For supper, I made a quick teriyaki pork steak, some Brussels sprouts, and heated up some of our garden fresh corn on the cob. On the final day of the February Pantry Challenge, day 28, we had smoothies or protein shakes for breakfast, egg sandwiches or leftovers for lunch, and for supper, I made hot dogs. We had some bean salad with it, and I heated up some of my home canned baked beans. And this meal just reminded me so much of summer, and I can't wait for grilling season. So I just want to share two tips that have really helped us with this challenge. One, I always keep these cases of dry milk packets on hand. I explain that I do buy milk on clearance and I put it in the freezer. And for the first few weeks of the challenge, we did use what milk I had in the freezer. But after that, I did rely on my packets, which I prefer these individual packets versus a bulk pack. The bulk pack is a slightly cheaper, but I feel like the quality it stays nicer if you use the individual packs, and they make 1 quart of milk per pack. So I have went through a case and a half during this January and February challenge. But I always keep this on hand because it's so handy to have, and it keeps well. And that's what we have been using for milk. That's why I haven't had to buy milk. I've never tried making cheeses from it yet, but I know you can, and I might venture into that at some point. And the other thing is, we eat a lot of egg sandwiches for breakfast or for lunch. And my son he's a purist. When he eats an egg sandwich, he does cook an egg and seasons it, and that's it. Hubby and I, though, what we will do is if we have a lot of veggies that are in need of use, like spinach and mushrooms and tomatoes, maybe some olives or something that we bought from Aldi when they have their special flavors of olives. If you go there, you know what I'm talking about. When we're ready to use up some veggies like that, then what we will do is we'll take some eggs and beat those with a little bit of milk. And I will use these, they're actually muffin top pans that I ordered from Amazon, but they make the best little omelette egg rounds to use on sandwiches. So it was probably mid-November that hubby made a batch of these. And when I say a batch, he used what was left in the case of eggs we had at the time. So he probably used about 40 eggs, if I had to guess. Because I bet we had at least 50 of these egg omelet rounds before the pantry challenge started. So that's what we do a lot. We just heat them up in the microwave. This is all we have left, what you see. So it's maybe 6 or 7 rounds. A lot of times, because of the size of these and the size of my homemade bread, a lot of times he and I will split one and we will each have an egg sandwich from one of these. But anytime you've seen me list egg sandwiches, this is typically what we are using as our egg sandwich. Hubby and I, not my son. But I love having these on hand in the freezer because they make the best, quickest little breakfast or lunch that you can imagine. And it keeps you from throwing away those veggies because all you do is throw them on the pan before you pour the egg in, or saute them first if we have like some onion or pepper that we want to use. And it's one of our favorite little snacky meals. Thank you for following along so far through this January and February of the Pantry Challenge. I will be continuing on through March because I did not use as much of my home canned products as I had originally expected. So I'm going to make a shift to really purposing using those products over my frozen meat. So stay tuned to see what comes of that creativity.